This is Rick Brandenburg for Turf Bugs and Rock and Roll, and it's late summer, and late summer in this case these flowers are really looking beautiful. Some flowers are kind of spent after a long hot summer, but these still really look nice. There's lots of bees flying around, but we're not going to talk about neonicotinoids and bee kills. We're going to talk about a subject that's one of the most common things I get calls in August and September, and that's when somebody's either out digging up irrigation or renovating an area, or they just see some areas of turf that don't look very healthy, and they dig down and they find white grubs, and they find very large white grubs. And we know that if you listen to any of us turf entomologists that we've been preaching for years and years, in fact 25 years, with the neonicotinoid type products and other white grub insecticides, you really need to get them out at egg laying, egg hatch, early egg hatch. And, you know, that in most parts of the U.S. anyway, that's the middle of the summer. That's somewhere around late June, early July. And then these products work very well. Once the grubs get bigger, they just don't work as well. That's not the nature of the compound. It's not because they're failures. It's not because they're not good products. They just have a very specific timing in which they work well. And this time of the year, August, September, is well past that time, but that's often where we find grubs. In certain parts of the country, we see more consistent grub issues in the Northeast and the Midwest, and they treat preventively. In areas like North Carolina, they're more sporadic, and a lot of people, a lot of turf managers simply don't want to spend the money as a preventive treatment because there may only be a 25% chance or less that they're going to have grubs, so they do find them later in the year, and they call me and say, what do I do now? And it varies from year to year. This year, we saw very few beetles flying in North Carolina, very few Japanese beetles. In areas of the Midwest, they saw record numbers. But it seems to be relatively consistent that all the flights and the egg hatches have occurred late this year. But with that being said, it's still getting too late to get really high levels of control with the current products that we have on the market. So what are we supposed to do? So what are you supposed to do if you find grubs in August, September, and every turf entomologist out there will tell you that the best products really don't work that well once the grubs get large? Well, the first thing is you really need to make sure you have a grub infestation and not just some small isolated hotspot like around an irrigation head or in a low area where the more abundant rainfall or perhaps the more abundant soil moisture in that area caused you to have a localized infestation. And even if you see a large area of turf that really doesn't look healthy late in the summer, make sure it's grubs. And that requires getting your favorite tool out and digging and looking just under the soil surface, looking in the root zone, and making sure you have grubs and making sure that they're distributed over a large area before you actually go out and treat. And possibly you don't have to treat the whole area because outside of that damaged area you may not find sufficient numbers of grubs to make it worthwhile. But the first thing you need to do is really confirm that you've got grubs over a larger area. The second thing is that the products, in Merit or imidacloprid, the post-patent products, Arena, Aloft, Meridian, Acelepryn, these are all products that we've relied upon very heavily. As I mentioned, they work best in midsummer. None of them are going to work as well as you probably want them to work if you apply them in August or particularly in September when the grubs are larger. They're going to give you anywhere from 40 to 70% control, probably. Some cases maybe even less, some cases maybe even more. But they're just not going to work great because that's not what they were designed for. It doesn't mean you don't do it, it just means you have expectations that are reasonable. And if I had to rank them, and I'm asked to do this a lot, and nobody sue me over this, but the data that I've seen from my program and from other locations is that probably by a small margin, Arena and Aloft are two of the better products for giving a little better control of larger grubs. And at the other end of the spectrum, Acelepryn is probably the weakest, with Meridian and Merit somewhere in the middle. Now that difference is not that large in most years. In fact, in some cases it's not even measurable. Other years it might be a little bit more. So it's not a night and day difference by any stretch of the imagination. There is another product that's been around since I think I was a teenager, and that's a product called Dilox. And Dilox is an old organophosphate. It's very water soluble. It goes down and it has an impact on grubs relatively quickly. It's not going to give you 90-100% control either. It will give you a reasonably good control, but I've seen control in the 50-60% category, sometimes 80%. So it's not the ultimate answer because it doesn't give you excellent control either. But really what you're looking at is reducing the grub population enough that the turf can recover and it can be healthy going into the fall and into the winter. And if that's the case, you're going to be okay. The other factor about Dialox, it is very sensitive to alkaline water. And by that, I mean barely alkaline. If your spray water is above a 7, you better use an acidifier or a buffer to reduce that down, because its half-life virtually will go from days back to hours if you apply it in an alkaline water. So make sure your tank mix is acidic, and then you'll get a little better control from that as well. But really, we don't have optimal answers. There's a lot of work underway of trying to find a rescue type treatment for grubs, one that we can use in September, and it will give us 95% control. We're not there yet. Perhaps in the near future we'll have it. But if you see grubs this time of year, give it your best shot. Use the right product. Water it in after application. Don't apply it if it's bone dry out there, because you're going to get almost 0% control. Wait till you get some rains. Water it in. Keep your fingers crossed, and hope that helps. Look forward to talking with you again soon.